What's up, guys? We're popping on here early. Raw hasn't ended yet because it doesn't feel like it's going to happen now, the way we're looking at it now. We're watching Charlotte and Rhea Ripley absolutely brawl it out. Oh, my God. Wait a minute. Never mind. This is not what I was expecting. Oh my God, are they going to cash in right now? Are they going to let her cash in right now? She's doing it. She's doing it. This is going to be a reaction show. You're going to see a live reaction as we go right now of Nikki Cross. Nikki almost superhero to the top rope. We're waiting a long time with her on the top rope. Nails her with a splash. Nikki is your new Raw Women's Champion. I did not see that coming. Wow. Wow. They didn't wait long for that, huh? They didn't wait for long for that at all. That's not the surprise I thought we were going to see at the end of the night. I will say that. Not at all the surprise I thought we were going to see. Man. All right. Well, that's a thing. Welcome in. Hopefully we'll get some people joining us over from Twitter and such. Oh my God, if I could type, it'd be amazing. So a night after Money in the Bank, we get a cash in already. That's crazy. I will give them props for everybody and their mother thought we knew how that segment was going to end. Everybody expected Charlotte to retain, and everybody expected Becky Lynch to appear. And they went in a completely different direction, which is crazy to me. Because I really thought they'd want a Charlotte-Becky matchup at SummerSlam if they could get it. And now with Nikki holding the title, you obviously hope that she holds the title for enough time to make that matter. But it throws that into complete chaos. Yeah, that's hugely surprising. Huge Raw. Really a huge 3 nights since they've gotten people back in the building. It's been a while since I've had any interest or any desire to jump on and react to anything WWE has done. And it's so simple, and everybody said it, that it's just, that's the difference that the crowd has made. But that's the difference the crowd has made. And in some way, the crowd has seemingly impacted the way that they're not necessarily booking the show, but I think it's fair to say that there's absolutely been they've stepped up in what they're trying to do. Obviously, they're not Raw. It's impossible to say you don't think that between, SmackDown was a great show for a while during the pandemic and continued to be a great show on Friday. It was simply amplified by the crowd. But Money in the Bank, obviously with the way Money in the Bank ended with Cena showing up and what they did tonight, they made a conscious effort to make these shows bigger than they'd normally be. I mean, obviously, we knew you were starting the night with Cena. And Cena did everything you'd want Cena to do. He got everybody ready to go. There was no reason to tiptoe around the idea that we're looking at the last match you're going to see on WrestleMania is John Cena versus Roman Reigns. That's just what's happening. So there was no reason to play back and forth or he addresses it right away. Obviously, they could play with it for a week or so of Roman trying to tiptoe out of it, but that's where we're heading. That's the biggest. I mean, that's the last match you see on WrestleMania. Or not on WrestleMania, on SummerSlam, which Freudian slip there. If on a normal year, SummerSlam has gotten to the point where it's referenced as it's kind of like the summer WrestleMania. This year more than any, because WrestleMania got people in the building, but it didn't get a full crowd. They are treating this upcoming SummerSlam like it is the biggest show of the year. And they're going to have to find a way to outdo it in Dallas next year, but right now they get a lot of time between now and then, so they are going to apparently blow it out for that show. Aries, what's up? Welcome. So that's a mega match. Anybody that was trying to push the narrative of John Cena returning being a negative, because I know how fans are, and everybody's always like we want to see the people that have been there every week be the ones that get those spots. And Cena's got a long legacy of people hating on him and thinking that he's not the level that he truly is. Anybody that thinks that, go look at the pop when he shows up at the end of the Money in the Bank. But you could say that they're cheering the surprise, they're cheering the shock of things. You knew he was opening the show tonight. They announced that very early today. We all knew Raw was starting with John Cena. He joked a little bit at the beginning of his preview. There probably were a few people in that crowd chanting Cena sucks. But that crowd overwhelmingly exploded and were behind John Cena the entire time. If you are still trying to fight the battle that John Cena being back is a bad thing, you're in the losing corner. It's just you're never gonna make that happen. It's like fetch. You're never gonna make it happen. So it's huge that he's back. I'm very interested to see. I would imagine he's going to be on most, if not every, SmackDown between now and then. And it'll be interesting to see how many Raws they put him on. This Raw made sense because they wanted you here for the beginning of Raw. Because we'll get to it here in a second. But the beginning of Raw was kind of slow. It was a little bit same old, same old. So Cena was a huge boost at the beginning of the show. I don't know that they'll have him there. I don't know that you need to have him cut a promo on Raw every week now. But it was a huge boost for today. It was also nice to see that they chose a guy that I would see being the right guy to kind of just give like a 30-second Cena rub to. And it was more than 30 seconds, but you bring Riddle out, you get him in the ring with a guy like that, and just see what happens. See how people react. Seemed like the crowd was behind it the whole way. It doesn't mean that anything's going to change for Riddle in the next, 3 weeks. But it's just getting him in there. And a guy like Riddle, who, by all accounts, has rubbed a couple of major stars the wrong way, it's nice to see him get in there with somebody and it have a positive reaction and go the way that everybody would want it to go. The six-man was what it was. It was fine. They advanced the Viking Raiders storyline to the point where we saw at the end of the show that they're going to get another title match. That's fine. I enjoy the Viking Raiders. But it was a little same old in that I believe we all are of the feeling AJ and Omos aren't losing those titles anytime soon. So we'll get another great match, but good to great match, but not a lot of juice there because you're not expecting any kind of surprise, especially not on Raw. I believe they announced that title match is next week on Raw. You're not seeing any change of the tag titles. I can't imagine on Raw, especially not going to the Viking Raiders. And that's not a knock on them or anything or any of their talent. It's just where they're at right now. It doesn't make sense. You're building Omos. The entire point of this is to build Omos as this unstoppable star. And they've got him standing next to AJ Styles, who can teach him everything and more about what he needs to know. There's no reason to mess with that now. From there, a match that if you were on any kind of social media, everybody was railing against. Elias and Jackson, was it Jackson Riker or Jason Riker? I don't even know what his name is. And that's part of, I haven't been watching Raw on a weekly basis because during the pandemic, it was very unwatchable. These guys, you've got Elias as the heel, but the fans want to react to him. You've got Riker as the fan favorite that not a lot of fans cheer for, that Texas crowd. While that's a crowd you, I hate to say, might expect to get behind Riker to some extent, not everybody, but to some extent, really weren't buying into it. For what it's worth, those guys did everything they could to try to sway you to their side. That a symphony of destruction match, which isn't a real match, it's just an excuse for them to put musical instruments around the ring. They tried some kind of crazy stuff during that match. I mean, I don't know if that cello is a legit cello. They could hollow it out. It looked big, it looks heavy. For him to break that over Riker's back, that don't feel good. Elias was busted open early in that match, and a top rope superplex through a table to the floor. The table helps, but to the floor. They didn't set that table up in the ring. To the floor. That is a legitimately serious spot. Those guys knew, I've got to think, going out there, those guys knew they were fighting an uphill battle. They don't have the most intriguing story going right now, but they have a story that they want you to care. I think they knew with that crowd that they were fighting upstream. And feel how you will about either of the guys that are in the match, where Elias is at, Riker's past. They did everything they could tonight to kind of change your mind. And maybe it doesn't change your mind about either one of them inside, outside the ring, but they had a hell of a match, at least in that segment. It took that match from same old to, okay, this delivered. This was better than it should have been. And it absolutely was. From there, you get the Charlotte celebration. That's the first time everybody seemed to think Becky Lynch was going to return. Instead, they set up the rematch, her and Rhea. I mean, it feels a little bit after the night that we are settled back into Charlotte is the villain, Rhea is the hero. Because they were blurring those lines for weeks as to which one you were really supposed to back. And when Charlotte gets the reaction she did last night, people were very excited to see her win the title. People were very excited, even just to see her tonight. They were hanging on every word tonight, and pumped to see the new champion. So they did some work tonight to try to put Rhea back in that hero role, but I really think like they are still sort of messing with her character to a degree. You heard the reports about Vince wanting her to smile more, which is fine. If you want her to be a fan favorite, you're going to want some of that. But the struggle is her and Charlotte are so similar that they can both kind of tween, and it makes it sometimes hard to determine who's who in the feud. So they got to work, especially now, obviously, with the way the show ended. Maybe that's not going to continue to be a thing unless somebody comes out to challenge Nikki that isn't Charlotte or Rhea. But they really should be getting to a decision on if Charlotte is the villain, Charlotte's the villain. We need to drive home that fact. If Rhea is the hero, like the mimicking Charlotte thing isn't helping her. You need to really give Rhea her own personality and her own demeanor and her own actions to really make that work. But they've got time for that if they want to, and especially now, when we get to the end of the night, The championship isn't necessarily tied to that rivalry. If that rivalry were to continue, it's not tied to that rivalry. They could certainly explore that to a certain degree. But they had they make the match. She boots Rhea in the knee. All builds up. Rhea's fighting from underneath with a disadvantage. Makes total sense. Up until about that point, and even to the segment after this, it just felt like another Raw. With the exception of Cena, obviously, it just felt like another Raw. Women's tag match. The tag match itself was what it was. It was there. It was all about the ending and the aftermath. Reginald cost him the title. Shayna and Nia get away from him at least, so there's no... Excuse me. There's no comedy in their situation. But they go right back to the comedy in that he immediately wins the 24/7 championship. Which is fine, because that's the championship to have that on. And if they really want to slow burn build how athletic Reginald is and try to really easy for me to say, convert him into a legitimate competitor, then I'm interested to see how they do it. You won't be able to do that with the 24/7 championship, but it's a good start. It's a good opportunity for him to just show off athleticism. Then you can work on the personality and making him into a legitimate thing. But interesting way to kind of flip him into something else, because if Nia just leaves him in the ring, it feels a little bit like you might never see him again. So they got him right back into something. That's fine. It was if you were gonna do a 24/7 title spot, that was about as good as it was gonna get. So you got your U.S. title match, which they were stiff. Humberto showed a little bit that I don't think he showed before, where he kind of hung with Sheamus when it got stiff and laying things in. The shot that broke Sheamus' nose, they keep playing up, but that's an accident, if anything. But he showed some aggression in that match that I think he would desperately need. So that match delivered on what you'd hope it would be, but important that Sheamus gets the win, because it feels like we're moving for SummerSlam to Sheamus, Damian Priest. So Sheamus is gonna get that win there, and he did. After that match, and that was a solid match. It was a quality match. There's nothing wrong with that match, even though I know some on social media were talking about how we have seen that match a number of times. But I didn't mind that match. I was good with that. From that point, though, they finished that match. Immediately then, Lashley comes out for the open challenge. And at that point, the show took a step up. At least one notch, if not higher. The minute Lashley hit the screen, the show from this point on felt big time almost throughout the entire show. One or two duds here we'll get into. But you get Lashley. Lashley's all business. You get a great promo out of MVP because he's an absolute star. It's part of the reason I really wish they did not crumble the Hurt Business, because Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander could still be gaining so much just from standing next to MVP during segments like that. The legitimacy that they could gain versus they weren't on the frickin' show. You're not doing anything else with them. It's not like they've gained anything from moving away. So, MVP is a stud. Lashley fills his role perfectly. And then obviously you get the hometown boy we haven't seen for months, Keith Lee. Personally, I was thrilled. I've been a Keith Lee fan since the Indies. Really wasn't thinking about him for the spot. People were talking, obviously, Goldberg. People were mentioning the name Lesnar. I could not see them have... the only way I would have seen that happening was if Lashley somehow didn't get out of the match. They weren't going to put that match on Raw. People were tossing around Jeff Hardy's name here, and obviously we'll get to him in a little bit. And then Keith Lee was kind of the fourth. Those were the four. Excuse me. It's late. I don't usually do this, and it's late. But those were really the four, and that was, I tweeted out at the time. Any of those four names people would have been happy with. It was just begging them. I could have seen them going with like Xavier Woods here, who had gotten a win over Lashley the week before and would have been trying to fight for Kofi's honor. I could have seen them going that way. I'm glad they didn't, because it just would have felt average. And it's not a knock on Xavier, but nobody was going to believe after the match with Kofi last night that Xavier had a chance to win it. And if you're really paying attention, when Keith Lee came out, nobody thought Keith Lee was going to win it either. I tweeted out at a time, too, as well, that I was thrilled. As soon as the idea of Keith Lee being the surprise was brought to my attention, I was all about it, knowing that what I was rooting for was for Keith Lee to look decent to good in a loss. You knew he wasn't winning the title. He shouldn't win the title. Lashley, especially after last night, absolutely established as a monster champion. But Keith Lee came out. He looked like a star. It's a great spot for him to debut. I know there will be people by the time I get up in the morning that will be on Twitter talking about how he got buried because he came back and had to lose his first match. That's not how that works. Dude came back after not wrestling since, I want to say, January. Immediately in the world title picture. That's a sign of what type of star, at least, that they think he could be. Now, could they ruin it in 4 months? Absolutely. But you want to talk about coming back and being in a main spot. He got offense in on Lashley early that Kofi did not get last night. So he did better than Kofi, and then he took his beating and he lost, which is what Lashley should be doing to people. Awesome segment. Obviously, Lashley wins. Ooh, and we'll get that out of my system right now. If you were not angry at the Cena segment at the beginning of the show, this segment probably made you angry. Because a lot of people were thrilled when Keith Lee walked through the curtain, because he was not that they have a curtain anymore, but you know what I mean. They were thrilled because he wasn't Goldberg. And there is a little bit, if you really want to go like from a logic standpoint, only a logic standpoint, if Goldberg's back there, why isn't he coming out for the open challenge? Why is he waiting and then after and hoping that he gets a match in the future? But neither here nor there. Goldberg comes out, proclaims he's next, and Twitter lost its mind because it's Goldberg. And Goldberg, as people correctly pointed out, has a tendency to show up, fight for title, win title. Looking at you, Kevin Owens. Looking at you, Fiend. He just has that reputation. I do not believe that he's the guy that beats Lashley. Although there is a scenario where I see it happening. Especially when we know how this night ended. I expected to come out of Raw tonight almost guaranteed that we were going to see champion Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lynch. Now that that is in peril, because if they had that match, I believe that Becky would win and win the title. And that's a massive fan favorite, winning a title at your biggest show. That's probably the co-main event. They probably go on after Lashley and Goldberg, in my opinion. So if Becky were to win it there, then you have your feel-good moment. Because I do not, early spoiler alert, if I keep doing these for what I think will happen at SummerSlam, unless they change my mind. Cena's not Hogan. He's not coming back to win the title. Roman keeps that title. They go off the air with Roman with the title. So you want a feel-good moment somewhere. Becky would have been it to win the title, and maybe she still will be. But Goldberg could be that moment. And it would be the wrong choice. It would be a detriment to what you've done with Lashley over the last few months. But you can't rule it out with them. You just can't. It's absolutely possible. But I love it in that, you know, again, I was expecting Becky and Charlotte. So Now, you'd say Lashley and Goldberg could potentially be your number 2 match, like your co-main event. When I thought it was going to be the 3rd match, because I think if Charlotte and Becky had been fighting for the women's title on Raw, that's your co-main. Your main is Roman and Cena. So your 3rd to last match, if you were to book it out that way, would have been Lashley versus Goldberg. And I think that's an amazing 3rd match. That's a huge fight feel. MMA type feel. Both men with a semi-MMA background. Goldberg's always had a little bit of that flavor, and Lashley has legitimately fought in the cage for MMA. So that's a great 3rd match to me. I don't love it as your co-main for SummerSlam, but there's still time to do something about that. If it's your co-main, it's a little more likely that Lashley would win. But the right answer is Lashley coming out of that victorious. Very much in the same type of match, probably, that McIntyre had. You'll see a lot of spears. You'll see an attempt to jackhammer, hopefully countered. You'll see a lot of spears from Lashley. It is what it is. But I think that the match will feel big, which is everything they're looking for. They're trying to turn this into their biggest WrestleMania. Only it's going to be SummerSlam. So that was all good. I was thrilled with that whole segment. And I'm getting sleepy here if you can't tell. And it might be just my body's way of trying to tell me to be nice. That I should be being polite and nice this evening. But it's going to be hard because this last segment, or this next segment, made no sense to me. First off, people got angry in the middle of the show the fact that they announced that Karrion Kross was going to debut this evening. And I will tell you why they announced he was going to debut this evening. And every single person on Twitter who got mad about this, it's your fault. I almost guarantee you it's your fault. Because the people that got mad about this are the same people every freaking Thursday that pollute my timeline retweeting what the AEW rating was and comparing it to every other wrestling show on the planet that gets televised to any part of this country. That's why they told you Karrion Kross was coming out tonight. Because they wanted people not watching the show, people that watch NXT who don't watch Raw, because they exist. I know it's more the other way. There's more people that watch Raw who do not watch NXT. I'm not disputing that. But there are people that only watch NXT that don't watch Raw, at least not religiously. And they wanted to make sure those people picked up their remote and turned the show on because they wanted a better rating. Why do they care? Advertising? Yes. But also because your average wrestling fan, and especially the one that talks on social media, is still stuck in 1998 thinking they're a television executive and giving way too much of a shit about how many people that they don't know are watching the same wrestling show as them. Stop ranting, raving, and losing your mind about the ratings every week, and they will stop caring about the number and start caring about the moment. It's on you. Because they're getting their advertising money anyway. I understand that's a part of it, but a guy like Karrion Kross, it's not like saying Goldberg's going to be here that night, where you're going to lose advertising or whatnot. Like, stop with the ratings nonsense. You don't work for the frickin' networks. It doesn't affect you. If you enjoyed the wrestling show, who gives a flying fuck who else watched it? Unless you're afraid it's going to go off the air, stop worrying about it. And they will not stop worrying about it, but it might not be priority number one, which it clearly was. Then, you bring Kross to the ring, and if you follow me on Twitter, I'm not, overly outspoken about this, but I've tweeted about it. I've put it on the record. Karrion Kross is boring as shit. I wish it wasn't the case. I really like his presentation, and I like his demeanor. And then the bell rings. Like, people, that's a Bruce Pritchard line from Something to Wrestle, and then the bell rang. And people say that about guys like Bray Wyatt a lot, and I always watched, before it was The Fiend, Bray Wyatt matches and really enjoyed them. Even the story ones, but when he would get into just wrestling, I always thought he could move around the ring, he could do some great things, and I really enjoyed the matches, and I never really got it. I get it with Cross. He's intense, he has a presence, but the bell rings, and then it's all slows down, and it's all slog, and it's all boring. So to take away the only spice he has, and I'm not being a creep here saying that I've got to see Scarlett through the whole match because of how hot she is. That's not at all where I'm coming from here. But she does spice up that package, and Cross needs all of the garnish you can give him. He can get it done inside the ring, but he's a charisma vacuum. Now we'll see how this goes, but the number of ways they butchered this segment is amazing to me. You don't give Cross Scarlett, who's there. Half of Cross's appeal in NXT is his entrance. And she helps make that entrance. You take her away. Then you change his entrance. Completely change his entrance. Gets in the ring. Now you go to commercial. And as you go to commercial, now is the first time you announce, oh, by the way, he's wrestling Jeff Hardy. Not local talent like my Twitter feed was expecting. Jeff frickin' Hardy, who's been telling you for weeks, hey, when there's people in the building, I'm going to do exactly what a bunch of you have been asking me to do for months since my return. I'm bringing back my single theme song. No more words. You had people that were so pumped for the return of this theme song. By the time he came out, people were more excited about the song he came out to than the NXT champion standing in the ring. That shouldn't be a thing. They should have been in two different segments. Jeff had to fight somebody. Jeff could have fought Elias in the same damn match with no story. But he could have shown up with that music, and that would have been fine. And Cross could have fought anybody and ran through them. Instead, you made sure before the bell rang, people didn't give a shit about your NXT champion. They cared about the guy that came out with the song they wanted to hear. And I don't care what song he came out with, no one is booing Jeff Hardy. It's not happening. Now, I imagine the reason that Cross fought Jeff Hardy is because they believed Jeff, being a veteran, he could make him look like $1 million at any point that he needed to. Anything Jeff needed to sell, he'd be there for all the spots. He could help Cross through it with any nerves. I get the idea of putting him in there from a, what's the word? Just making sure it looks good perspective. But you cut Cross off at the knees because it's an NXT debut. The people that do watch NXT are so excited to see those guys come up with the hopes that they're going to do well. They're going to want to cheer for them. You took away any possibility that anyone was going to cheer for Karrion Kross. And somebody's going to tell me, well, he's a heel. They don't want you to cheer for him. You do on night one. Because it makes it sound like they matter. Everybody on that show got a reaction. And they killed every bit of reaction Kross could have gotten. Now, Jeff cheats to beat him. At least. The babyface cheats to beat him. Which is interesting. But it does help give Kross an out. The heel doesn't just get beat clean. Cuts the promo after the match. You would imagine he's going to be here going forward. And that Jeff Hardy will take a lot of revenge from Kross to make Kross really look like a formidable opponent. But I'm pretty sure Kross hasn't lost a match on NXT. So way to go making that go back to feeling like a third brand. Dude hasn't won. I remember back to when Kevin Owens debuted in WWE, and he was the NXT champion at the time, and he came in and he freaking beat John Cena in his first match on a pay-per-view. That is a massive reason why NXT right now is considered a third brand, not a lesser brand. Instead, you just brought your NXT champion to Raw to lose to a guy who's lost to half of the roster in the last 6 months. Why? Why? No sense. I will watch what they do in coming weeks. I acknowledge the fact that it seems as if they're working to build a story across. But that sucked. That was a terrible way to start it. It's a very flat way to start it. And now you are battling uphill to make that crowd, which anybody in the back will tell you, hey, 80% of those people, or 75% of those people, or 90% of those people, depending on what your perspective is, they don't even watch NXT. Well, good. Then they don't know all the great stuff that Cross has done. They just know he came out and got punked by Jeff Hardy night one, and he looked like a boring schmuck bag that didn't belong on the main roster. Good freaking job. From there you get the Alexa Bliss segment. Hey Steely, I was, on the Alexa segment, I was 1000% there for every segment that involved The Fiend and Alexa Bliss. All the way up to WrestleMania, I was in. I sought those segments out on YouTube to watch them when I didn't watch the main show. I was there for the Mania match. A lot of people thought the Mania match was stupid. I was there, totally into it, 100% behind the story. And I love and admire how devoted and dedicated Alexa Bliss is to this character. Because it's such a drastic difference from what she's done before. Steely, I know you're in the chat. I don't know who else is. I imagine I might not be the only one that smells the butt coming. But these Alexa Bliss segments suck balls. I've lost all of my interest in these since it's been Alexa and the doll. Tonight's segment was a complete and total waste of time. It accomplished nothing. Nothing at all. Nobody came out of that looking any better than when they went in. Eva probably looks worse. Doesn't matter. Nothing happened. Complete and total waste of time. That on something that you built up, for the entire show. You had 2 or 3 times where Alexa broke in and was like, very special guest, we're doing this thing. And on a night where you had surprises like Keith Lee and Goldberg, like, the expectations were rising. And it was the doll and nothing freaking happened. And nobody cares about, no matter how talented she is, and she is talented, I know she is, I have seen her matches. I don't watch a lot of NXT UK, but I saw her in the freaking Mae Young Classic, and I've seen her since then. But I don't give a shit about a person whose freaking name is Doudrop. I can't. At 35, I can't spend any time caring about somebody whose name is Doudrop. So when she drops Eva Marie and drops that terrible name and goes back to a normal name, I will start worrying and concerning myself about Piper. But she sucks next. I thought they were done. I was actually surprised to see them tonight, because I thought she left Eva in a tag match last week, so I was very surprised to see they were even together. Exactly, Steely. And it's not even that I hate the doll. Like, I'm all there for the supernatural stuff. I'm a kid who grew up on The Undertaker. I was 4, but I watched the pay-per-view. I remember watching the pay-per-view at 4, where The Undertaker debuted. I remember it. I lived through absolutely everything that The Undertaker did. He was down the road when Yokozuna put him in a casket, let the urn out, and he freaking floated up to the heavens. I'm there for all the supernatural stuff. The Alexa stuff is just lacking. She's great, but I feel like the entire story is based on Bray's brainchild, and Bray is so good at that. I just think you need him involved, and you've got people in the buildings now. He's got to come back. I feel like he has to be at SummerSlam. So maybe it was just tonight there was too many other surprises that you didn't want to do that. But it seems like you're building up an Alexa Eva Marie thing. So unless Bray's going to return, I really thought he was going to return at Money in the Bank and he was going to cost Alexa the briefcase in some way, but they didn't go that way. But that Alexa segment was a complete and total waste of time. The worst segment of the night. It just was. It didn't do anything for anybody. And then Charlotte and Rhea as your main event. Their match was good. Not as good as Money in the Bank, but it's a different deal there. It shouldn't be almost. They had less time. They're telling more of a story than they were. They just, it didn't surprise me that they kind of ran through it a little bit faster. It's just a time-based deal, especially knowing what came. But everybody and their mother were waiting for Charlotte to win, hold up the title, and Becky Lynch to come out. And to WWE's credit, everybody tells WWE, you just do the same thing. You're so predictable. We always know what's going to happen. You can never surprise anybody. Even when you have a surprise, you tell us beforehand. Nobody thought Nikki was going to cash in tonight. There wasn't a single person on my timeline when that match started, or in the middle of that match, or at the frickin' DQ that thought or was saying, here comes Nikki. Nobody saw that coming. As soon as she hands it over, you're thrilled. They make the switch. I'm thrilled that Nikki got it. I really am. Because people were worried that maybe she'd be the first woman to lose it, and I think that Nikki's been criminally underused for a long time. So I'm thrilled that she won the title. It's interesting only that obviously there's an expectation on I was thinking that they were going to try to get to Charlotte Becky as your co-main event for SummerSlam. That may not be the plan now. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes. I think now your top women's match at SummerSlam has to be coming up this Friday. Bianca continuing to retain her title over Carmella, only to be surprised by Sasha Banks. Because I don't think I could see Becky going to SmackDown. I really could. Either Becky or Sasha are coming out on Friday. And that's your big women's match. Especially if Nikki has the title. I love Nikki having the title. But she's not on the level of those other women. So, but Bianca is hugely over. We learned that on SmackDown. How over Bianca was. That reaction was legit. So if you want to do Bianca and Becky at SummerSlam, good with it. The only reason I thought it was going to be Becky and Charlotte was because I thought Charlotte was so Teflon that Becky could win. It wouldn't hurt Charlotte any bit whatsoever. And Becky would win the title at a big show. I thought that was the way to go. But overall, like I said at the beginning, it's been an extremely long time since WWE has run any show where I've had the desire to get on here. I mean, look, I've been on for almost an hour, literally just talking about this show. It's been a long time since I've had that desire to do that at all, and I've actually had the desire to do it 3 times now. SmackDown was great, Money in the Bank was great, and tonight started slow, but delivered. Tonight was a better Raw than you've seen in at least 5-6 months. I really don't think there's been a Raw that's come close to tonight. You look at SummerSlam, Cena Reigns, Lashley Goldberg, Edge Rollins, McIntyre, Jinder, probably Bianca and Sasha, if not Bianca and Becky. If it's Bianca and Sasha, you're probably still getting Becky back at some point. Like, that card is so stacked. That's going to feel like a WrestleMania. And you're going to have 80,000 people in the building. That card is going to feel so huge that it's unreal. So it was an awesome Raw from these guys. Yeah, and like I say, it was an awesome weekend. Money in the Bank was great. The only problem Money in the Bank was when Peacock didn't want to work. But I was thrilled for Big E, as mentioned in the chat here, Steely. I was thrilled for Big E to get it. I was happy for Nikki to get it. I didn't think she was going to win, but I was happy to see that. Roman and Edge was slow, but they got to where they needed to go. And then Lashley and Kofi was just, it was what it was. Lashley just dominated them, which Kofi's good at that, so I get it. But the biggest takeaway from this is everybody has been saying for months that Raw is unwatchable because of how long it is. I was on, I spend most of my time on Twitter for these shows. We might do a lot more of this reaction if they stay even fairly interesting, because I really do like the idea of this and trying to build up some sort of following on reacting to this stuff. But SmackDown had quality stories going and delivered on them in front of the crowd. Money in the Bank absolutely delivered on the hype and then blew everybody away with the Cena reveal. And then Raw tonight, a show that people have said is unwatchable. By the time we got to hour 2 and we started with we had the United States title match and then the Lashley Open Challenge, that show flew by and I could have watched more. That's the type of stuff they have to realize they can do. They have a small window here where people that are just getting back into the buildings are going to cheer everything. But they're also about to spend a lot of time in a lot of the same places. They are touring. They've got, they got a show here in Boston soon and shows to different places. But you're going to see a lot of Texas in the near future. They've got to keep that stuff moving. Absolutely have to keep that stuff moving. But tonight was an awesome show. Started slow, picked up, absolutely picked up. That segment with Lashley was pure freaking gold. Absolute gold. And Steely's not wrong. Honestly, if you're gonna have one or the other, you'd rather neither. But if you're gonna have a slow anything, you'd rather start slow than end slow. And the Nikki thing was awesome. It was a big surprise. Everybody was expecting Becky. So, great night. I would say overall great night. Anybody who's looking at me right now can tell that it's almost midnight my time. And that we're either yawning or struggling to keep the eyeballs open. So, this was cool though. I will absolutely keep doing this. I will do this, as long as there's interest, as long as there's some people willing to pop in. I've tried in the past to try to latch on to somebody else's podcast or something to do these things, and it's just, you got to build your own following. And we put it out on Twitter today, asked if anybody was interested in coming and hanging out. There wasn't a ton of activity, and I said it on Twitter, I'll say it again. Well, there's only one way to build a following. We got to get started. We've got to actually run one of these reaction shows and see where we go from there. We'll see if I end up putting this on YouTube. I don't know if I'll have it with it, especially being a Raw reaction show. I feel like it's got to be timely, and I don't know how quickly I'll get it up there, but we'll see. But I gotta say, people like to give WWE a lot of crap. I don't know how you give them much crap for the last 3 shows they've run. This whole weekend has been big business. SummerSlam is stacking up to be a must-see, can't-miss show. Just from the top of it. Who knows how they fill out the bottom half of it. But even, like Roman Reigns versus Cena is going to be must-see. We're going to have to watch SmackDown, especially with Cena being there. He's already confirmed he's going to be there. They're going to have some sort of war of words unless Roman just lets Paul do his talking, and that's going to be gold even if he does. Just a hell of a run right now that they're on. They're hitting deliberately because they're trying to build this SummerSlam into the WrestleMania that they didn't quite get to have because of all the people there. Many, many more than they had for Mania. That yawn was unavoidable. Sorry, guys. They're pulling out every stop they can. And as a fan, rather than complain that a guy like Goldberg's back or whatnot, I tell you, just enjoy the ride. I've had a hell of a weekend right now because I have avoided every spoiler. I didn't know anything. I didn't know Cena was coming back. I expected something would happen at Money in the Bank, but I didn't know who. I knew he was a possibility. I knew Lesnar was a possibility. I knew Undertaker was a possibility. I knew Goldberg was a possibility. But it's so much more fun when you don't know. So I stayed away from all the spoilers and everything like that. So I popped just like everybody in the building last night for Cena. Same for Keith Lee. I was thrilled to see Keith Lee. And Goldberg even, who I have no interest in seeing as world champion. He'd better be coming in to lose. But I was pumped to see him. It was an awesome surprise. Even though we knew he was in talks with him. You weren't expecting him necessarily there. So, great show by WWE tonight. Great weekend for them. The biggest problem that's come out of this weekend for them has been the issues with Peacock. Because we had not really experienced any kind of issues with a pay-per-view on that service since they moved over. I would imagine more people watched last night than have watched in a while because of the crowd. So they need to make sure that they have that buttoned up so we're not dealing with that all the time. But that's my thoughts. I appreciate everybody, Steely and Aries, popping in. I appreciate everybody on Twitter helping me get the word out. 3 Count Thursday. If you're not familiar with them, go find them. They get a podcast that goes out every week. A couple of podcasts. They put a lot of content out, and those are good guys. I have a lot of banter with them during the shows, and they were the first, when I said I was going to do this tonight, to retweet it out and try to get some visibility and some eyes on it. So I appreciate that. We will be back with another one of these quite possibly as early as Friday with SmackDown. We're going to see how long WWE can build this momentum. Do you keep building your momentum, or do you just expect that the crowds are there and willing to cheer for anything? Because they've shown a tendency to be willing to boo when they need to. Or to chant, "We want Becky" at Charlotte at every single possible opportunity because we want Becky. That's just the way this works. So, good times. We'll see how they continue. And we'll see you guys next time. Have a good night.